Hello everyone, this is David, and the movie we watched tonight is Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, also known as Godzilla vs. Ebirah, also known as Ebirah, Horror of the Deep, also known as Godzilla, Ebirah, Mothra, Big Duel in the South Seas. Is that enough titles? I think so. You know, it's kind of funny. It has like the most titles I've seen thus far. There are some with more, but this is a very middle of the road film. I personally enjoy it, but I have a lot of sentimental value from when I was a kid. In terms of actual like action and monster style, there's not a lot. But let's get into it. There is a new monster in this one, unlike Invasion of the Astro Monster / Godzilla vs. Monster Zero. There's a brand new monster, but there's a problem with that, and we're gonna get that right now. Let's talk about Ebirah, the horror of the deep, if you will. Now, unlike other horrors of the deep like Cthulhu or the Leviathan, this guy is a giant like shrimp. And I believe his name, from what I've heard, I don't speak Japanese, but this is what I've heard, is that Ebirah is a combination of the words giant and shrimp, because I believe ebi is shrimp in Japanese, so I believe his name literally is giant shrimp. And that is what you're getting here. It's basically like a giant lobster. That's all it is. It has lobster abilities. It can swim in the water, which is kind of funny because we get a lot of flying kaiju, but not that many swimming other than Godzilla. I mean, there are kaiju that can swim, but this is an aquatic kaiju, and a fully aquatic kaiju is pretty rare. It doesn't come on land and fight people there. It lives in the water and stays in the water. So that's the thing. And it's got big claws and it can pinch you. So that's about all there is to say about Ebirah. He's kind of unimpressive, all things said and done. So let's get into the movie. So this is kind of weird. So this guy Yata gets lost at sea, and his mother's like praying to this, or is with this medium who's contacting the land of the dead to see if she can find his soul in the spirit world, which I think is interesting. I don't know why she thinks he can find it over there, but okay, fine. A lot of spiritualism back in those days. I mean, still nowadays too, but so what ends up happening is he knows his brother's not dead, so he is going to look for his brother, and he brings his wacky friends along, and they do this dance competition. They fail the dance competition to get a boat, so they go onto this boat that they find, and Ryota steals it. And the owner of the boat comes down and is like, okay, you guys, I don't want you here, but you guys can stay for the night. Turns out that guy's a thief that stole a bunch of yen from a bank. And so they're sailing away, and Ryota's just sailing across the ocean, looking for his brother where his brother's ship disappeared. Turns out they run into Ebirah, and he picks up the boat and smashes it, and they wash up on this island. I don't remember the name of the island. It's some nasty island. It's like Death Island or Skull Island or something like that. If it comes to me, I'll mention it again. It'll probably just pop right in. But I don't really remember the name of the island. The fairies that worship Mothra and act as the high priests mention its name, but I honestly don't remember. Anyway, they wash up on this island, and here's where, for a little while, we're going to deal with this issue. It's not really an issue, but it's a thing. So up until this point, Godzilla movies have all dealt with Godzilla or some other monster invading the Japanese mainland. And now we're entering into what I like to call the island cycle, where for a few movies, Godzilla is based largely on an island setting, which I like because I like the idea of tropical South Sea islands. It's a very fun idea, but the problem with that is twofold. One, you don't get Godzilla smashing cities, and two, you have a very limited group. You don't get the tanks coming out. You generally don't get the jets. The usual stuff they throw on Godzilla doesn't happen when he's on an island like this. Now, this one's a little bit of an exception because there is an evil organization on the island that has stuff like that. So that does exist here, but it's not the same. There's a lot less for Godzilla to do, so he doesn't show up nearly as much in this film. Anyway, getting back to things. So they're on this island, and there's this group called the Red Bamboo, and they're manufacturing nuclear weapons. And apparently they found a way to keep Ebera at bay by using this yellow liquid. And they've been using slaves to make it, stolen from Infant Island. So that's a thing. And the first time we see Ebera in all its glory is when these two guys escape, these two islanders escape, and they go out into the ocean, and Ebera comes up and kills both of them and eats them. We don't actually see him eat them, but he apparently skewers them with his sharp claw, and they're dead, and he puts them in his mouth or whatever, accounts for that. So that's a thing that happens. So everyone's scared, and this girl sneaks off, and Dio, I believe is her character's name is. She sneaks off, and she bumps into the protagonists, and she first thinks they're with the Red Bamboo, but they tell her, no, we're just guys. Red Bamboo chases after them. They find this cave that they decide to live in. It's kind of hard to find, so they find it kind of by accident. So they're hanging out in this cave, trying to figure out what they're going to do, because the Red Bamboo's looking for them. So they let's attack in the night. So they basically break into the thing, because one of the guys is like a thief, so he's like a master burglar, so he can break in. He picks the lock, gets them in. They steal a bunch of stuff, like they steal some wire, some grenades, a few other things. One of the guys gets tangled up in a balloon. Balloon goes up, and he gets taken off to somewhere else. And one of the other guys, the comic relief guy, gets captured. So now it's just the thief, Dio, and the other friend. So they throw the comic relief guy into the pit with all the other slaves that make the yellow liquid. He gets the smart idea of making phony liquid, so they make a phony liquid that apparently they don't test this or anything, so it'll wreck the ship, because that won't have any bad consequences for them, like getting shot. But yeah, so that happens, and then Ryota lands on Infant Island where his brother is, and he asks Dio if his brother was with them, and he was. So he lands in Infant Island, and they're praying to Mothra, and Mothra's not waking up. Now, at this point, you'll realize something. I've talked for a good while about the film, and yet I have yet to mention Godzilla. And that's because Godzilla doesn't show up until quite a way into this film. It doesn't really do much. I mean, he's in it, but he was... There's a complication where this film was supposed to be about King Kong, so Godzilla was really written with more King Kong in mind. So Ryota is reunited with his brother. They're on Infant Island. They talk to the fairies. The fairies are like, here, take this raft, or take this boat, take this food, take this yellow liquid, go back to the island, try to help us out. So they do that. Tell them to, when you get there, tell them to build a net, because we're going to send Mothra. We're going to try to send Mothra in to save the day. Okay, cool. So they get there, but there's a storm. The yellow liquid that they would use to sneak onto the island gets washed away. Ebera shows up, smashes the boat. They wash up on the island again. They get caught in traps that they've been setting up, and the guys set them, they get caught in traps that their group has been setting up to catch the Red Bamboo. Conveniently enough, they're reunited. They're all together, and they find out that Godzilla's there. Oh, sorry, the other three who are not captured decide to wake up Godzilla by using a machete as a lightning rod and then running this copper wire down to where Godzilla is, because they find that he's sleeping in the cave. Like, he's just passed out. Like, he just, presumably from his fight in Godzilla vs. the Astro Monster, where he fell into the ocean, he's kind of just disappeared at this point because he doesn't resurface. So this is where he went to go just like relax, apparently. So they're like, well, we can wake him up with lightning. Now you notice something about that. That's very different. Godzilla usually isn't a big fan of electricity in apparently a lot of the stuff, but in this one, he was supposed to be King Kong, and Toho's King Kong powered up by electricity for some reason. That's a longer and more complicated story than I'd like to go into at this moment, but it involves a lot of silliness. So suffice it to say, they wake up Godzilla. He fights Ebera that was coming after the two brothers that were coming back to the island, so they can make it to the shore safely. he has a volleyball match with Ebra, which is kind of silly. Why he doesn't breathe atomic fire till the very end, I don't know. But it ends with him breathing atomic fire and Ebra running off into the ocean. Sure, makes sense. So now Godzilla's running around, and at one point they get chased by the red bamboo while out, and Dio gets chased by them, and Godzilla shows up and kind of traps her, chases off the red bamboo, and the rest of them are like, so what are we gonna do? Because Godzilla's like just chilling out there. They're like, well, we'll get him when he falls asleep. So Godzilla falls asleep, but then he starts falling asleep, and then jets attack him. So now he's fighting the jets, so they get Dio out of there. And then after the jets, there's a giant condor that attacks for no discernible reason. Apparently, there's just a giant condor. And the giant condor is swiftly defeated, falls into the ocean, and dies. So that's a thing. Now we're moving towards the end of the movie, where they decide to free the natives. Godzilla destroys the base. They free they activate the bad guys activate a self-destruct. Godzilla goes out. He smashes the base, which causes them to be unable to fix the self-destruct. Godzilla fights Ebra. All the natives make like a big basket to get rescued in out of stuff they wove together. Mothra shows up, grabs the basket, picks it up. Godzilla challenges Mothra. I don't know why, because they're supposed to be allies now. But sure. And they fly off the island because it's set to basically implode the island / detonate the island. And then Godzilla jumps off the island too and swims away. And the island explodes. And presumably all of the natives go back to Mothra's island. I don't really know what happens to the non-natives, like the actual Japanese people. Presumably they end up, since the fairies can come and go, I would assume that the fairies would take them back eventually, but who knows? They might end up staying there because they like it there better. I don't know. So let's Godzilla versus the Sea Monster. A little bit more to talk about than Invasion of the Astro Monster, but it's because the plot's a little different. It's not rehashed, and there's a new monster to talk about. There's actually technically two, if you want to count the Condor, but I really don't. It doesn't even get its own name. It's just called the Giant Condor. And the fight with Condor lasts all of like 30 seconds, and is so haphazardly cut together that you basically can just forget about it. So this one's an okay one. It's okay if you like island movies. Like if you like the idea of a bunch of guys just on an island having to deal with basically evil terrorists and giant monsters, this one's right up your alley, not ally. My pronunciation is terrible. I'm blaming it on allergies, but whatever. So that's a thing. So this movie's pretty good, all things said and done. I mean, I have a lot of sentimental value towards it, so maybe I'm looking at it through my nostalgia glasses and not my honest reviewer glasses. But you know, it's a Godzilla film. They're all pretty watchable, with the exception of Godzilla's Revenge, which, believe me, I'm not looking forward to reviewing that one, but it's coming up. It's coming up. So, yep. This movie, definitely check it out. It's more or less kid-friendly. Nothing too scary. I remember seeing this at a young age, so I imagine kids nowadays wouldn't have a problem seeing it. In terms of entertainment, it's really like half monster movie, half island adventure. So if you like that sort of thing, you're going to like it. If you don't like that sort of thing, you're not going to like it. So anyway, that's about what you got to deal with. All right, good night, folks.